Hello everyone. This will be the video recording for Chapter 1, which you all will be probably starting to work on by Thursday. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to talk about some of the things just to review. Make sure that you look at Blackboard 101, kind of getting started, course info, course documents, assignments, tests, and discussion board tabs along the Blackboard side there to make sure that you understand where everything is supposed to be. If you have questions, don't hesitate to email me or call me. Also, if you haven't, make sure you remember to go ahead and print out the syllabus and the course calendar, which is on the back side of the syllabus there. I'd make sure and put it somewhere that you can look at frequently to make sure that you're on target. I'd even suggest, if you're using Google Calendar, to go ahead and put in when assignments are due on that calendar to help you stay on track. Maybe even hang it in a place you'd remember real quick. The first thing I'll say and mention is, remember, like I mentioned Tuesday, make sure you get your background and fingerprinting done. Have any questions, please contact Mr. Runyon in his office. Now you should have definitely filled out all of the paperwork that is in your, let me go here on Blackboard here. Should be under course documents, and then week 1, and then scroll down. The important papers folder has all of those. You need to get all of those completed. If you haven't all today, get it done. And a reminder too, watch for anything blue. I'm going to go back on my course documents page, but you'll see when you look at the course documents section in Blackboard that week 1 and week 2 are blue. That means that I've gone through and they are completed. If you want to work ahead a little bit, you can go ahead and look ahead. But you'll notice that week 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are in red. And if you look at week 3, there are a few things that are in blue, but there's still some things that I may update. My notes for Chapter 4 I may update yet, and some of the other things in there. So do not, if they're red and you're trying to work ahead, wait. What I will do is this week I'll be looking at week 3, and so I'll always try to keep a week or 2 ahead so that if you do want to work ahead, you can. So let me get that checked. I did that. When you look at week 1 then, like I showed you the other night, you'll see Chapter 1 module. And so what you'll need to do is, again, it kind of says on there what you need to do this week. These are the quote-unquote assignments. Background check, application for placement sent, discussion board for Chapter 1. And again, initial posts, especially this week, should have been yesterday, because you'll probably be looking at this on Thursday. And then Chapter 1 quiz. So those are the items that are due this week. Next week we'll start strong and heavy. We'll have 2 chapters, so make sure you get to things early if you can, and get things going on that one. Remember on the quiz that as long as you take the quiz by the due date, you can retake those quizzes to get a better score up until the day, about 2 days before the quizzes, the actual test over them, and there'll be 4 chapters in each test. So, and I will make sure and let you know each week and remind you of those dates as you come into the classroom. Then as you scroll down that week 1 folder, we already went over the important papers. You'll see Chapter 1 folder that has all the information and items that you would need to look at on Chapter 1. Benefits to labeling, which is what you'll want to watch. It's labels in special education, a student's perspective. It's on YouTube. Click the link, and you'll want to look at that before you do your discussion board. So, and I should have talked about that on Tuesday. So I'm doing this on Saturday as it's snowing outside. So and then you'll see the Chapter 1 quiz on there also. So I'm going to click chapter 1, the purpose and promise. You'll see the YouTube video for chapter 1. That's what you should have clicked to hear me right now. My notes and lecture. Then there's chapter 1 summary and discussion questions, and chapter 1 notes and lecture. Those last two items are definitely important items that you should at least look at, even print out, so that you can be looking at it through the week. It'll give you some definite helpful hints to the quiz that you'll be taking, in addition to the PowerPoint off the chapter. So the next thing I'm going to do, let's see here, I've talked about that. Reminder, if you have problems in Blackboard, call the help desk. Definitely email me if you're having difficulty, but the help desk is going to be the one primarily the most helpful at figuring out what's going on your computer or on your internet. I will say here, and I'll try to repeat several times, when you're taking the quizzes, please make sure that you're using a wired connection, not a Wi-Fi connection. Because if the Wi-Fi goes down or there's a lower speed that causes Blackboard to think that you have disconnected, then that is going to be your score for that quiz. And then you're going to have to start all over. So anything that's pertinent, and I'd recommend this for any online class on campus, use a wired connection if at all possible. Let's see here. You'll notice that each chapter has the PowerPoint that the publisher created, and also one that probably says My Notes and Lecture. And that means that when it was a face-to-face class, I add a few things, add a few comments, and I'll also try to do that as I'm talking on the video about the chapters too. So anyway, I would recommend that as you listen to the video, as I get started, this will be a little bit longer, but as I get started on the PowerPoint, you go ahead and pull the PowerPoint up on your computer and kind of watch it and watch me at the same time. Let's see here. I talked about the quizzes already. Remember, the observation report that I discussed on Tuesday is probably the most critical because if you do not finish the observation report, I cannot pass you for the class no matter what type of score you have going in. That's why it's so critical that you get the paperwork to Mr. Runyon's office so that he can look for a spot for you and get that done. If you're listening to this spring, then he will normally set you up and keep you updated. I'll also be updated, but I do ask that just in case he forgets to let me know, if you will go ahead and email me once you've received your placement and where you'll be, so that I can keep tabs of that also. And during an 8-week course, I'd recommend as soon as you get the placement, you call and contact the school, set up your times of when you're going to be there, and get that moving. It is due probably about the 6th or 7th week. Let me look here. I tried to make sure that you didn't have a whole bunch due in 1 week, but it does look like every week is kind of full. But yeah, week 7 in the middle of the week. You'll notice most times that things are due on Sunday. But with this, I wanted to make sure it takes me a little while to get these graded, depending on the amount of students in the class. So make sure and watch that. And then make sure you keep an eye on the assignment section on that one. And there is a test folder. Just a reminder, if you click the test folder, you will have 4 tests that show up. Each test has a review that you can print out and use and help you get ready for the test. So make sure and look at that. Discussion board. Make sure that when you're looking at discussion board, that you do them timely. I do request and need for all of you most times to make comments to your peers. And to do so, I've asked that as close as possible, all of the discussion boards are posted by Wednesday, and then that way it gives each person a chance to go back in and make comments to your peers. and we'll go from there. So unless otherwise stated, all discussion board initial posts are due on Wednesday. Now, when we have 2 weeks, which normally we have 2 chapters each week, then I'll be a little lenient. One can be on Wednesday, and then one can be on Thursday, but you need to have them up by that Thursday night, at least the initial post, and then you can go back in on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and get your comments that you need to get your points. Make sure you will see when you let me go back here in assignments, in the course documents, click the course documents, and there's a discussion board scoring rubric. Make sure that you click that, and I would print it out and put it with your schedule, and make sure you get points for your initial post on time. Then you get points for 2 feedback or replies to your post from your classmates, and there needs to be a total of at least 3 interactions per discussion board to get your total points. And then you'll see at the bottom there is the scoring rubric that I will use. You have initial comment, 2 points, feedback for number 1, 2 points, feedback number 2, 2 points, your contribution to the discussion. So it shouldn't just be a yes, I agree. It should be yes, I agree, and then give your details of why you agree and why and what. And you can read that contribution section. And normally, Netiquette is kind of an easy 2 points for most people, but use correct grammar, use good sentence structure, don't use slang and abbreviations, and make sure they're appropriate. There are a couple that I will ask you to disagree with somebody, and you need to be very nice even though you are disagreeing. So make sure that you're looking at the discussion board and scoring rubric. Let's see, I'm trying to make sure I've got all the things out of the way. I've already talked about what's due. So let's go ahead and get into the actual PowerPoint. And I'm going to go through some of this. I will jump down through just because I think that you all are college students. You all should be able to read and understand. But I would look always, I'm at the chapter 1 copy of my notes section. I'll give you a few seconds to put me on pause while you pull up your PowerPoint for a copy of my notes so that you can go through the PowerPoint with me. Okay, well, hopefully now you've clicked me back on and you have a copy of my notes, chapter 1, in front of you. There will always be chapter objectives. I'd look at this, possibly even print these 2 out, or sometimes there's 3, and that way you print them out, and then as you are going through the chapter, you can try to find the answers to these questions as you're going through your chapter. Then I'm going to leave these on here. Typically in a face-to-face class, I ask that all the students read the chapter before class and take the quiz before we start talking about it. But I'm going to go, and then what I do is I go through on the PowerPoint and go through the top 5 or 6 questions they had. I'm going to go ahead and leave these up here just because I think it will help you. And many times these are very similar each class questions, so commonly missed questions, I'm going to just pass over them because I do explain them pretty well. I give you the correct answer and then go through and tell you why they're not there. So if you watch the video and look over that, you will have some good ideas on upcoming tests. Who are exceptional children? Exceptional children are different from the norm, either above or below, to an extent that they require an individualized program of special education and related services to fully benefit from education. And you'll notice that as we're looking through some of the DESE guidelines that that's a pretty important sentence right there, require an individualized special education to benefit from education. The term students with disabilities is more restrictive than exceptional children, as it does not include children who are gifted and talented. So as you look through this book, it is called, Exceptional Children. Let me get the little Yeah, Exceptional Children, Introduction to Special Education. But you'll notice there's a chapter in here that talks about children who are gifted and talented. They are not included in students as a student with a disability. And so when we're talking about special education, we're not talking about that the students that are gifted and talented. However, this book does go over them in one of the chapters. So I wanted to kind of clear that up. Sometimes that's one students get concerned with. I definitely would look at the 4 key terms. If they're in red, I would highly suggest you look at that and make sure that you know that. Typically that means that I have them on a test that is coming up. So impairment, loss of reduced function of a particular body part or organ. As opposed to a disability, it exists when an impairment limits the ability to perform certain tasks. And then handicap is a problem or disadvantage encountered when interacting with the environment, whereas at risk are children who have a greater than usual chance of developing a disability. So you need to make sure that you know those terms and know the differences of those terms. Okay. Here is what, when you come to something like this, I'd like for you to have a piece of paper out and kind of answer what you think. When does a disability become a handicap? You know, take a few seconds, pause the video. What do you think about that question? When does a disability become a handicap? I'll let you pause and write down what you think. Okay, and here's the answer. A disability limits the ability to perform certain tasks like seeing, reading, or walking. A handicap refers to a problem a person with a disability encounters when interacting with the environment. For example, a child with an artificial limb may be handicapped when competing with non-disabled peers in a basketball game, but not handicapped when competing academically in the classroom. In a typical class, we would generate with a group a list of 5 types of disabilities and go through that. But of course, an online class, you can't really do that, but you can definitely think about different circumstances where a disability might become a handicap. How many exceptional children are there? Well, there's more children with disabilities in special ed represent 13% of the school population. That's a pretty good substantial, and if you look at the numbers, 6.4 million children and youth with disabilities 3 to 21 received special education services during 2012-2013 season or school year. And there's some other documents down there too. You can read a little bit, some other items. You want to make sure and look at, know the prevalence of disability categories. There are 4 listed here. Specific learning disabilities, which are specific. The reason they're called specific is it might just be a disability, a learning disability in math, where that student is fine in reading and writing. Or it could be a student that is a learning disability in writing, but they will do fine in math and reading. Or it could be all 3. Speech or language impairments. And then other health impaired is one we'll discuss too later on in the book. Other health impaired is basically those that have a medical diagnosis. Might be ADHD, could be some other health-related issues that cause them to not be able to be educated in the same way as other students are. And then autism. Those are the top 4 that you'll be looking at, and there'll be some test questions on that. Benefits of labeling and classification. This is where your discussion board question comes out. So recognize meaningful differences in learning or behavior, and it is the first step in responding responsibly to differences. Provides access to accommodations and services not available to a person without a label, and helps practitioners and researchers communicate with one another to classify and evaluate research finding, and leads to more acceptance by peers. Since you should have already done your discussion board, I am going to give my 2 cents in here. I think in the field of education, it is something that is useful. as long as teachers use it for what labeling is used for, is helping us determine and help others that are in education in our buildings understand more about the students' needs. But that is just the tip of the iceberg. If you are autistic, that doesn't mean that every student is the same, because I guarantee you they are not the same. Each student with a disability is different from the next student you'll have. So if you have one student with autism, that is all it is, one student with autism. You cannot put everybody that has autism in the same box and teach them the same way and get the same benefits. Each student with autism is going to have a different way, maybe similar, but typically a different way that you're going to have to teach them, different triggers that will help you versus trying to use one strategy. The other thing you want to look at, it goes through all disabilities. A student that has cerebral palsy, a student that has Down syndrome, a student that has a specific learning disability in reading. You're not going to teach them the same. Now, you will have similar strategies, but they're not always going to be the same. So there's my 2 cents worth. As long as it's used for what it's supposed to be used for, as a help, fine. But some of the other reasons that the book mentions are valid too, because other people will use the R word for something that is not necessarily what we intended it to be in the field of education, and particularly special education. The next slide helps make exceptional children with special needs more visible to policymakers and the public. Funding and resources for research are in there too. Disadvantages, focusing on what the students cannot do. One of my colleagues, and I use it pretty regularly now, talks about the disabilities, talks about the abilities of students. All of the students with special needs in special education, just like other students in your class, have abilities. And they have some abilities they can do very well. And they may be actually very high functioning in different areas as opposed to their area of disability. So don't use the stigmatism that everybody is the same just based on their label. And also low expectations, because I tell you what, if you have low expectations for students, that is what you're going to get. You're going to get low scores. You're not going to get them doing what you want. So always have high expectations for all students. And I guarantee you will be shocked and surprised at some that will come up, and they will actually come up to the level that you want them to, and probably more than what you thought ever possible if you have those high expectations for those students. And also watch for that negative self-esteem. Students, as they grow up earlier in the years, they may not realize that they are special and that they are going to, why they're going to special classes. But as they get older, you all were kids too, and kids can be mean, and other kids know, well, you go to the special classroom, you go to the special trailer, or whatever it may be. And so watch those students and make sure that you can brighten their day, as they will, many of those kids will brighten your day as you come in. The disadvantages, there's more often misused, creates a tendency. Disproportionate number of children with some racial or ethnic backgrounds have been assigned disability labels. We'll talk about that later on in the class also. Alternatives to labeling and classification. There's a listing of alternative there. Rose's Law changed all references to mental and retardation and federal statutes. We add a T there. That'll even you up. So read through those. Make sure you understand those. Here's another discussion board topic, or discussion topic. What experiences have you had in your life with people with disabilities? Just think about that. We will talk about that in class at times. I will not call on you to answer questions, but if you have a particular experience, if you have family members or friends that were disabled and you would like to bring some things up, some personal experiences, please do. I do think it brings it helps when students bring up these points for the other students in the class. Were they negative or positive? And talk about that. you don't need to worry about. I'm going to go ahead and change that now. Take the quiz by the due date. You won't even know that I... Okay. Class pictures you all don't need to know about. That should be hidden in yours, but you'll still see it. Why are laws governing the education of exceptional children necessary? Well, in the past, they were excluded. Insane asylums and other places, students with disabilities were not in the public school setting. They were set aside. They were not there. They were thought of as not able to do things, and they're denied full and fair access. Well, now we have FAPE, free, appropriate public education, and all students have the ability to go to school. Separate's not equal. Talks about Brown versus Board of Education. You'll want to remember that, so you'll want to make sure that you look at that in the book. Equal protection. Park versus Commonwealth in Pennsylvania. All children are entitled to a free, appropriate public education. I just spoke on that one, so make sure, again, if it's in red, you need to remember that. You need to go through that. Talks about Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. The purposes were to ensure that all children have available to them free, appropriate public education, ensure the rights of children and their parents are protected, and to assist state and local educational agencies in providing the education of children with disabilities. Assist states in implementation, ensure necessary tools are available to improve educational resources, and also assess and ensure the effectiveness of efforts to educate children with disabilities. And then the major principles, you will want to know this, hint, hint. Zero reject, non-discriminatory evaluation, FAPE, least restrictive environment, or you will probably hear me call that LRE. We in education always have to use letters instead of words. Procedural safeguards. Later on in this class, I will make sure that you can see a copy of procedural safeguards. These are as a document about 25, 26 pages, if I remember right, that all parents are supposed to get at least once a year. In the IEP meetings that I was over, I always had a copy at the table, and at the beginning of it, I would say, you all have been provided before, but if you would like another copy, here's a new copy. Or if they changed, I would make sure that all parents got a copy of the new procedural safeguards at each meeting. Parent participation and shared decision making. Very, very important. Other provisions, you've got special education services for preschoolers. You have early intervention for infants and toddlers, assistive technology, and scientifically based instruction, along with universal design for learning, or UDL on that one there. Legal challenges. You have extended school year. Extended school year is similar to summer school for those with disabilities. Many times, students with disabilities will forget things over breaks. So a lot of times we will monitor that over like a holiday break or even just a 4-day weekend. And if those students show that they had forgotten what they just learned the week before, then we will take knowledge of that and make sure that we can teach them in the summer so that they don't forget everything that they've learned over that time. FAPE and related services, the Hendrick Hudson Central School District case, disciplining students with disabilities. I would definitely look over that. That was the Stewart versus Nappy. And then the right to education, the Timothy W. versus Rochester School District. I would make sure that you look at that. Here's a few more related legislation items. The items on there, I would definitely look at 504, Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, No Child Left Behind. Would be a good idea to look over that. No Child Left Behind talks about accountability for student learning. Requires annual assessment of 95%. Sorry, that's my dog. I have Nash. He's a therapy dog for the Thrive program, so he always goes down with me in my office. So scientifically based instruction. And also the next slide, what is special education as an intervention? First of all, it's preventative. It keeps minor problems from becoming a disability. And there's 3 different tiers on there. There's primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. Know the differences there and know what that is. Remedial, attempts to eliminate the effects of disability. And then there's compensatory, enables successful functioning in spite of the disability. What is special education as instruction? Well, there's a who, what, how, and where. So who consists of an interdisciplinary team of professionals working together with parents and families with a primary responsibility for helping the exceptional children learn. This is the IEP team. We'll discuss more of that in the next chapter, but these are people that are expected to be at the meeting, and many of them have to be at a meeting for it to take place. And we'll discuss more about that in the next chapter. What? Well, it's differentiated, sometimes by its curriculum and what is taught. So differentiated instruction is one of the things that we will be discussing. You know, it means you're basically teaching the same thing in a different way. And so you have to look at each of your students that have special education needs and how are you going to differentiate your instruction with that for the special education students. So that's why there will be a couple things, differentiated instruction. You will have the differentiated instruction lesson plan, or the DI lesson plan, that you will need to do. We will have discussed that a little bit Tuesday, but we'll also meet during the week when that's about a week or two before that's due and go over what that will be for you. There are sample lesson plans for each of you to choose from. Or if you've gone over this in your other class and you have one ready, then you can utilize that also. It all depends on whether you're done in the other class. How? The use of specialized or adapted materials and methods. So when you differentiate your instruction, when you instruct those students, what are some of the things that you might utilize? Or what are the things that you might adapt? And then what materials or methods are you using for those students? And then the where. Identify but not defined by where it takes place. Is it in the regular education classroom? Is it in a special education classroom? Is it in another school building? You know, where is it? Where does it take place? Individually planned, specialized, and intensive goal-directed instruction. That is special education. Characterized by the use of evidence-based teaching methods, the application of which is guided by direct and frequent measures of student performance. You will be, as all teachers are, you will be collecting data. And if you're a regular education teacher, your special education teacher that works with the children that you have will be asking for the data. You know, how are you assessing their reading? How are you assessing their writing or their math? And how are they doing as it pertains to their annual IEP goals? And we'll discuss a little more about that later on too. The video at this point that does not have anything to do with you. I a lot of times will show a little bit of a video to our face-to-face classes. I will try to do that during our time in each week, but this first video I won't be able to probably get to until a couple weeks in. Close the gap, the research to practice gap. Improve the quality of pre- and in-service training programs, and that's for you as teachers. We need to make sure that you teachers are given the best instruction, the best research possible, and the best training possible to help you help our students. Increase the availability and quality of special ed programs for gifted and talented students, and then help secondary students with disabilities transition from school to adult life. And we'll talk more about that in some of the following chapters. They're really towards the end of the for the most part. Increase funding for special education, improve the behavior and attitudes of those people without disabilities toward those with disabilities. Changing that attitude, those perceptions. And I think more and more as I see students with disabilities in inclusive classrooms and taking part in with regular education students, I think we're seeing a lot of those attitudes change because they can see the benefits and they can see what those students do. And open more opportunities for individuals with disabilities to participate in the full range of residential employment and recreational options available to people without disabilities. To me, that is very similar to the Thrive program that UCM has. When we started in 2010, we were one of just a few programs in the nation that were having a instructional type of program like ours. But now there's more and more. There's actually 4 or 5 around the area now that are going and getting started. So those are very similar ideas there. Apply advantages in technologies. Technology continues to change, and increase access to that assistive technology. I would like for you, the next slide is State of Missouri Guidelines. I'd like for you to click that link and be able to look at those guidelines. When you click it, you will see the different compliance standard and indicators. We will go over each one of those as we go through the eligibility criteria, but it might be good for you to look at some of the program review standards, the state performance plans. This is where all of the special education teachers will be getting a lot of their data, especially when it comes to eligibility requirements. Homework, again, you need to review the chapter, take the chapter test, make sure that your application for placement is sent to Mr. Runyon so you can get your background check completed. Normally they are good for a year, so if you think that yours might still be good, then go ahead and get with Mr. Runyon and make sure. And then discussion board, you should have gotten on it Wednesday. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you should go on in multiple days. That's the other part of that rubric. Don't plan on just going on Wednesday and commenting and being done. Go on Wednesday, put your initial post. If you want to post to your peer, go ahead, or a peer, go ahead. Otherwise, come back on Friday and see if there's more comments. Maybe somebody commented to you and you want to comment back to them. This is part of that. Since we're not a total face-to-face class, this is part of that discussion, part of that learning process is getting back on there, and that's why I want you to go multiple days. To get full points, you'll need to go on at least 3 days, 3 different days, and give comments. Complete, which is Sunday, and then you'll have opportunities to increase that as it goes, and then get ready for next week's chapter. Again, this is a fast-paced course. We are doing everything that we would in a regular 16 weeks in 8 weeks. So don't get behind. If you start having troubles, get with me. Do not wait 2 or 3 weeks in to get with me about some problems and difficulties. I'm there to help you. My office downstairs is in the basement of Levenger in the 1270 suite, right up the steps in the office 1275. So don't hesitate to drop in. I don't have any classes during the day this semester, so most times I will be there. But part of my job in the Thrive program is to give presentations and to be at fairs, so there will be some times that I won't be available, but I will try to keep you posted on that. Generally speaking, I will have open times on Fridays for you to come in, and but please try to set up those times via email so that I have advanced knowledge of when you want some help and when you need to come in. So anyway, have fun with Chapter 1. We will see you next week. And have any questions, let me know. Bye-bye.